on your what we done started. Look at what we done started. This the people party.
Peace and love, party people. How you feeling? It's Talib Kweli, the MCEO, the BKMC. I am in the place to be once again. This is the People's Party, the world's best podcast. Shout out to my lovely and talented and thoughtful and thought-provoking co-host, Jasmin Leigh, in the place to be. What's up, Jasmin? How you feeling?
Woo! I'm feeling great. How are you doing?
Good. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too, not on Instagram Live scratching it up.
I'll be scratching and cutting and scratching. And you know what? I'm glad that you said that because that provides a perfect segue for me. These two gentlemen, and that's right, we have two gentlemen on our show today. This is the second time that we've had two people, have been chief inspirations for me when it comes to DJing, when it comes to selecting music, when it comes to having the courage and being brave enough to bring my musical taste to the world. Not just for MCing, but also for DJing. These two gentlemen have been instrumental in my development. These men are absolutely foundational to hip hop. They possess keys to understanding this culture. My man Busta Rhymes used to sell tapes of their radio show. He used to call it crack. It'd be like selling crack at school. I don't know why Busta Rhymes would want to sell crack at school, but this is the type of crack he wanted to sell at school. The first time Raekwon the Chef from Wu-Tang Clan ever heard himself on the radio was on their radio show. Biggie Smalls, Jay-Z, both spit historic freestyles on their microphones. Royce da 5'9", Old Dirty Bastard. These are some of the names, Big L, myself, Eminem, Big Pun. These are just some of the names that you've heard first on the radio, on their show. They have always been fierce advocates for hip-hop culture and have always been passionate gatekeepers for the culture. These two are also artists in their own right. They are creatives. They create music. They create films. One is an author. The other is a filmmaker. Together, they have a new album, No Request. And since we're here for full disclosure, I'm going to read something here. The reviewer on UPROXX.com, and UPROXX is our partner in People's Party, wrote, No Request is both a testament to the legendary duo's curatorial legacy and a building block upon which something entirely new may grow. They've changed so many lives, including my own, in the hip-hop universe. I'm personally honored to have them on my show. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the legendary Stretch Armstrong and Bobito Garcia.
Welcome to the party.
What's up, y'all?
We on Thursday, October 22nd, we debut a bi-weekly live radio show titled Stretch and Bobito Radio on Apple Music Hits. And we also, aside from the album No Request that we released on Uprising Music NYC, this Friday, October 23rd, we release 3 singles off of an upcoming album, which are archival 90s freestyles, which we've created a cappella versions of, and then remastered, re-EQ'd, as well as remixed with elements of our band, the M19s, looped and freaked by Stretch in the studio. And some of the artists that are featured on the first EP off of this upcoming LP titled Freestyle, include Big L, Jay-Z freestyle, the Method Man Ghostface freestyle, and the Biggie freestyle, which no one's ever heard in its entirety. Not even, if you watch the film titled Stretch and Bobito Radio That Changed Lives.
Why don't you also tell us where we can find that film? So
Stretch and Bobito Radio That Changed Lives is available at stretchandbobito.com. That's our home site where you can find out music, about our music, about our upcoming podcasts, about our radio, about press, merchandise, on and on and on. But if you don't want to search for our website, just go on Vimeo, iTunes, Amazon, etc. Type Stretch and Bobito, the film will come up. It was on Showtime for 2 years, and it was on Netflix for 2 years as well.
I like this new grown and sexy version of Stretch and Bob. Y'all got bands and stuff. And I was, you can find the certain freestyle, certain of the freestyles you can find on YouTube and everything. But, I like to buy music. I don't know how much longer iTunes is going to be around for. I'm excited at the possibility of being able to buy some of those freestyles. You know what I'm saying? I like
that.
No
doubt. Thank you.
Now, what's interesting to me is listening to the NPR show, which you now said you have made a more independent move, and that's definitely aligned with who you guys have been as independent artists throughout your career. It struck me listening to the Dave Chappelle episode. And shout out to Dave Chappelle because I'm out here at Yellow Springs as his guest right now.
Word.
But it struck me when he started cursing and he said, wait, can I curse? And y'all were like, well, yeah, you asked after the fact. And I'm someone who used to listen to Stretch and Bob because you could curse. You know what I'm saying? Like that's part of the allure of the show was that you could curse and that you played records with the curses in them. And so it's amazing to me that I'm just blessed to have lived a life. I've lived a life that's so beautiful and blessed that I got to hear Stretch and Bobito be like, hey, with the language. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's amazing to me. So now with this newer iteration of what y'all doing, is it going to be more cursing than on the NPR show?
That's a good question. I think there's going to be a clean as well as a explicit version. I think
okay.
I think the live broadcast, because our show is going to be on Thursday nights, keeping with tradition, at 10 p.m., not 1 a.m. It's going to be at 10 p.m. for 2 hours. That's when it's live broadcasted and it's archived. But I believe the live is going to be clean. I think.
Okay.
Not entirely positive. This is all kind of new, and we've just been welcomed to the Apple family, and we're trying to figure out how it all works. But the first show is locked and ready to. Well, I shouldn't say that, right? Because it's supposed to be live. They didn't trust us to go live for the first show with our history.
It was live when you did it.
Yeah, there you go, Jasmine.
Now, Stretch, the Stretch Armstrong doll came out. You were about 7 years old. Does your name have anything to do with this doll?
Just we're both white. That's about it.
Okay. It's interesting you made that point because actually when I was doing my research for this interview, I went down a rabbit hole of just how the Stretch Armstrong doll even came to be. And part of it was they wanted an Aryan looking doll. That was part of it. Like, so it's interesting that he was like,
yeah.
yes, that's what we have in common.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely more ethnic than Stretch Armstrong, than the original Stretch Armstrong.
Right.
I've got curly dark hair and I could suntan pretty nicely. But no, I mean the Stretch Armstrong doll character really wasn't a part of my childhood at all. It just I kind of knew what it was when that name was given to me. I just liked the way it sounded. It sounded like a good radio name. And
it's a good
knew,
DJ name.
And I knew it followed in the tradition of hip hop DJs taking on the names of comic book characters and Superman, like, you know, Clark Kent and Richie Rich and et cetera, et cetera.
Now, was your name Yo Adrian at some point, right?
Well, before I got on the radio, I was DJing in clubs maybe for not even a year, and literally like every party I did, I just gave myself a new name. Just for
Skinny
fun.
Bones?
Yeah, Skinny Bones. I was actually on the radio as Skinny Bones, but that name was given to me by a legendary writer, Sharp, Aaron Goodstone, who I got to know because I believe it was through Stash. My sister knew Stash from downtown, and Stash knew Aaron. Stash knew Sharp, and introduced my older sister to Aaron, and Aaron would come over, and that was like a huge deal for me. I mean, we think about now and how people become stars and these figures that younger people, you know, admire and are impressed by. You know, there was no MTV, there was no internet. So, you know, for me, just the fact that Aaron Sharp was heavy on the 6 train. I mean, he had whole cars, was, you know, a prominent writer on the 6, and I lived on between Madison and Park, so that was my train growing up. Like I would see Sharp, you know, full cars, and then I met Sharp, and I was like, oh, yo, I'm a teenager. I'm like, yo, that's Sharp. Like he was a star to me, and then he ended up calling me Skinny Bones, and just went with it.
That's a very unique New York story.
He's actually on one of our first shows.
Bobito, you came from, I like how I said it, Bobito. Bobito, you came from Westgate Projects, right? And Stretch, your family's from the Upper East Side. Did that ever create any tension between you guys or any weirdness as you guys first got your start?
No, I mean, well, let me clarify. I was born in Douglas Projects, but where I grew up, Westgate, it wasn't projects. It was a building that was under Mitchell Lama management. So they had a number of residents that were required to be of low income housing, but it was open to like a very varied financial landscape. So we had like the firemen from the hit show of some, I forgot what TV network in like 1971, like lived in our building, and we had like the local city councilman lived in our building. And then we had people, you know, Section 8 welfare living in the building, which was beautiful. I mean, we all loved it. As far as me and Stretch's separate backgrounds, I think I learned more about Stretch growing up on the Upper East Side when we were making our film than when we were, you know, meeting back then and, you know, nerding out on all the amazing hip hop that we both loved. Mm-hmm. It really, you know, I mean, even now, you know, we've known each other 30 years. This is our 30th anniversary of radio broadcasting and a friendship. And like the story he just shared about Sharp, I never knew, you know, him talking about, him juxtaposing his name, Stretch Armstrong, as part of this pantheon of hip hop artists being named after, you know, fictitious characters. I never thought about that back then. I was just like, oh yeah, Stretch Armstrong, the figurine, dope, word, fly. But like, you know, it's like, you know, we all need like some space to allow retrospect. But back then, I mean, you know, the genuineness of his friendship and his passion for hip hop is the only thing that mattered to either of us. I mean, and, you know, and same thing for me to him. And, you know, because I went to Wesleyan University and I went to Laura Marion High School in Pennsylvania as part of an academic scholarship program called A Better Chance, I had befriended other affluent or, you know, well-off people who lived in the Upper East Side. So it wasn't like he was the first person I ever got cool with that was from that zip code. You know, and nor was he the first person from that zip code that I thought, you know, wasn't like stuck in conservative ways and really, you know, open-minded about exploring, you know, my culture, my nationality, my community, as well as this sort of shared hip hop movement as well, which was like separate and connected at the same time. So that's how I would answer your question, which was a great one. You both did like batting 1,000 so far, because like nobody's ever asked Stretch like about the Stretch Armstrong like figurine and how that played into the.
Well, we care here. We care, you know.
Yeah. Y'all doing your research. I love it.
Bob, how do you feel? How was it working with this nerdy Upper East Side white boy who went to private school? Did you hold that against him? No, I mean, honestly, for me, Bob really reminded me of a lot of the kids that I grew up with at my school. I mean, yeah, I went to a really progressive. And it's funny when you live. I mean, listen, Manhattan, the Manhattan I lived in, Upper East Side. It's really, I lived on 96th Street, the border of Spanish Harlem. You cross the street, you're in Spanish Harlem. You cross the street, you're in the Optimo. And, you know, it's run by all these young Puerto Rican cats who used to call me the N-word lips. That was my nickname when I walked in there. Yeah. I mean, what's more New York than that, right?
I know a white boy that has some nigga lips too. Oh, sorry. Was I supposed to say N-word lips too?
No, you can say it, John.
I am. And, you know, I lived in a building that had a doorman and the building, yeah, my building was pretty much all white, but across the street that changed. And I went to a really progressive school that was founded by Gus and Marty Trowbridge, to white people that were heavily invested in the civil rights movement. They marched with Martin Luther King Jr. I mean, they were really prominent. Prominent. I wouldn't say prominent, but very impassioned activists, and they founded a school out of that movement. And the whole idea was that there'd be no minorities, no minority groups in the school, economically, racially, anything. So it was a very balanced group of kids. There were 18 of us in each class, and and even outside of the class, my father felt it really important that I go to the neighborhoods of my friends. And as a preteen, I was genuinely afraid of going to Harlem because you hear stories, right? I mean, white people really weren't supposed to go to Harlem in the 70s. And my dad would take me up there and drop me off and say bye.
Wow.
I'd spend weekends in Harlem, going to, whether it was we touched on this in the movie, Ivan Rivera, and going to church on Sundays. But yeah, going to black churches, Latino churches, mixed churches. I got the full experience, and then I went to a very white, privileged high school where it seemed like even at a high school level, like there'd typically be like 4 black kids and like 2 Latino kids. And it was a combination of some of them being very prepared for what was happening academically, and some where it felt like this isn't a good fit. Like these kids right here, they're not ready for this. And that always kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because you're going to school with kids that like, they don't feel like they really belong there. And then of course, I went to college, but that 4 years of high school felt like a real departure from what I was used to in elementary school. And then when I met Bob, it kind of felt like, oh yeah, like this is like a return to what I grew up with. And it felt, we just had aside from the music, aside from the humor, there felt like a real kind of compatibility and a synergy that I really, at that point, was aware of missing from my life for the previous 5 or 6 years, which, when you're 19, 20, that's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What your father was doing was he was raising an anti-racist baby.
That's
and
right.
I say that because I just bought this book, because both Jasmine and I, for Ibrahim X Kendi has this book, Anti-Racist Baby.
Oh, I read the adult version.
That.
Yeah. Jasmine and I just had newborns, and so does Steve Bermucci.
Congratulations, amazing.
Thank you. I've been buying children's books.
Just earlier today, Bob and I were talking to a friend in Dubai, and I wish that you didn't need to have black friends. You didn't need to have, a gay cousin. You didn't need to have, an immigrant friend of the family to advocate for fairness. I feel like, you see a lot of people like, oh, I really wasn't down with that whole LGBTQ until my son came out, and now I'm like, I'm riding. It's like,
yeah.
Why wouldn't you just want to be pro fairness from day one as a human being? And not to say that, not to take anything away from the way I was brought up, because I love the way I was brought up, and I take my hat up to, I thank my parents, in my heart every day for not being like what we see out there in a lot of people. So I'm sorry, I stepped on what you were about.
No, that's exactly where I wanted you to go. Yeah. See, that was what I meant to do. Now, Bob, you spent some time as an intern at Def Jam, right?
Well, let me clarify that. I started out at Def Jam as a messenger, making $5 an hour.
Okay.
So I was never an intern there. I was a paid employee, but I was doing intern-like responsibilities, and in a lot of cases on my own accord and motivation, because between errands there just wasn't much to do. So I was like, I would hear Andy Tab with a lawyer be like, yo, what sample is this on this Rakim record? Oh, that's James Brown. I know, Bobby Bird, and he'd be like, who is this kid? You know what I'm saying? Like, I was constantly attacking their senses across the board, you know?
Right.
So I really made the most out of that situation very quickly.
I was gonna ask you something that you actually just answered just now, but it leads me to another question.
We do that. Me and Stretch do that. We do what you do.
Yes, you already know. But at least you opened up something else when you talked about how you'd be walking by the office and you know the sample. Speak to my audience about how being invested in hip hop and down by law at that time in the culture, because there were mainstream aspects of hip hop culture at this time. You know, you had the Vanilla Ice and MC Hammer and things like that. You know, Run DMC had the record with Aerosmith, but by and large, hip hop was still an underground culture that was a coded language that you and Stretch were sort of still, learning how to become gatekeepers of. And not gatekeepers in a bad way. It's the second time I said this word, but Jay-Z talks about later in his career, the need to have cultural gatekeepers to just maintain the integrity of the culture. And I do believe in that.
Sure.
But talk to me about how the plethora of knowledge you gain from being a hip hop fan, from knowing about art to knowing about music to knowing about everything, because hip hop is such a beautiful collage of everything that is dope about mainstream culture. You know, that's why hip hop DJs could play any record. Y'all both DJs. Y'all have to know every single genre of music to be a competent hip hop DJ. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, I think, part of that I was subscribed to the tenets that we all love about hip hop, but part of that I would assign to just the idea that I grew up in New York and I'm born in 1966. So I got to taste the end of this. I mean, not the end, but I got to taste the civil rights movement. I got to taste Black Power movement. I got to taste the explosion of Southside in the 70s. I got to taste, and when I say taste, I'm saying like I was in the parks. I was, I got to be a part of playground basketball culture. I am first generation, sneaker culture in its burgeoning stage. I remember rhyming with Craig Radix before it was recorded and something that could be commodified. So I sincerely say that I feel blessed to have lived in the 60s and 70s and been able to grab and experience so many rhythms of New York, of New York life, right? That's just kind of interwove into itself. And then break into 1989, 1990, where it's all of a sudden, now I'm working at Def Jam. Now I'm writing for The Source. Now I'm on the radio with Stretch. And all of a sudden it's kind of pivotal because look, I didn't, in retrospect, me and Stretch are titled gatekeepers, but at the time we weren't trying to be gatekeepers, but we were very cognizant that we had to be a vanguard because we saw Vanilla Ice. We saw MC Hammer. We saw, what happened to breaking, in the mid 80s. And, it was a cautious time, and it was okay, we have our shot to be on the radio. Let's make the most out of it and play the very best artists and music that is available to us. And there was an ecosystem. The Source, before they put TLC on the cover, was a trusted, I'm just being serious.
Yeah, bars.
It was a trusted publication for what the very best that hip hop could be. Me and Stretch on the radio was a trusted source for the very, very best of what hip hop could be. And, and there were other, members of the ecosystem that could manipulate what was shared and what was, we were mentors or teachers. I mean, in every discipline, you have professors, you have people that have, studied, get masters, in the martial arts, you have high, level, I don't know what the terminology, but people need to be mentored. And right now we're in a very open space, which is wonderful because a lot of people can participate, but not everyone is being mentored. And so, we had the opportunity in that era to guide people. And it wasn't just music. It was yo, I'm wearing these Adidas Forums in red that I copped in DC on F Street. Nobody knows the spot to shop. And I could talk about playground basketball in a way on the air that no one would know about. It's all coded language you know, and, you know, people would listen to our cassettes in Germany, in the Black Forest out there and in Tokyo, who didn't even speak English, not even as a second language, didn't speak English at all. And they would somehow decipher not what we were saying, but the emotion that was being put forth in those cassettes, and it would affect them. You know, I remember the first time me and Stretch went to Copenhagen, and there was a dude that we met that like barely seen any photos of me. I mean, we were on radio, you know, and he was like, yo, like I basically dress like you. I got my hair cut like you. Like, I just want to look like you. This is a dude in Copenhagen that was like, biggest, like,
you were like, get off my dick.
No, but I'm just, it was curious to me how influential we all were, Talib, in that era, beyond just the words that were spoken or the beats that were being danced to. You know?
Man.
And it was a responsibility. You know, it was a responsibility that you took hold of from your very first verse as an unsigned artist on our radio show. You know, and then to the point where you're like recording and putting out records. It's like, you know, we took all that very seriously. You know, I still to this day take that seriously. I'm not on the forefront of trying to, you know, keep the hip hop flag alive, like I was in the 90s. But, you know, I still care to see that it's alive. And I hope that there are other people who are, you know, active vanguard keepers, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean,
I think I veered off on your question. I veered off on your question. But
No, it's a beautiful answer. I mean, it shaped all of us. And I said at the beginning of this that I'm really, really humbled and honored to be talking to y'all because, again, like you just mentioned, my first appearance on your show was 1995 with Mike and Nine and Tash. You know, I was a developing MC. I cringe when I listen to that. I'm like, ooh, you know what I'm saying? But you know, even with
no, I mean, listen, I'll be honest with you. When you came up, you know, there were a lot of artists who would bring up their homeboys, you know, and sometimes it would be like striking gold, you know, like Fat Joe brought up the Terror Squad, and one of the Terror Squad dudes was Big Dog the Punisher, who 2 years later became Big Pun. Like, wow, we struck gold. Big L brought up Murder Mace and Killer Can. They became Cameron, you know,
and Jay-Z.
Tash and Mike and Nine. Yeah. Tash and Mike and Nine brought up Talib Kweli. I didn't even know how to spell your name. On the cassette, it was Quali, you know, and it was kind of like I didn't fall in love with you until I liked you as an MC. I was like, okay, he's got good ideas, but like you flourished, you know, by the time you came out as a polished recording artist, you know, it was like, there was a big jump. So I hear you, like you could cringe at hearing your first, but you know, like that said, like it was a rite of passage. You know what I'm saying? It was a rite of passage for you, and it was a rite of passage for us as well. You know, like we hope that we were providing a space for unsigned artists to express themselves on a weekly basis, you know, because there wasn't another station that was doing that the way that we were with the reach that we had.
Now, as far as you know, tying it back to the DJ, like Serato has made it easier for someone like me to come in and say, I DJ. You are both, you and Stretch are people who could probably still to this day run out immediately, do a whole party with just vinyl, just 45s, all that. Now, you know, I remember running around the city trying to find a Stretch Armstrong party, or, you know, and how cool it felt to be in a Stretch Armstrong party at them days. Can y'all tell me, and Stretch, especially you, if you could go first, name some records back then and even to this day that a DJ would have that you as a DJ would be like, oh, okay, I respect that. You know, especially in this era where you could get everything on Serato and iTunes, but there's still some tunes that are just on vinyl.
Oh, you want names of songs? Damn.
I mean, you know, give me like two. I don't want you to give up the whole, you know, secret of NIM, but you know.
Let's see. I mean, it's funny. For Apple, they're encouraging us to play music that can be found on Apple Music, and they have a vast archive that is constantly getting expanded. There's a song by Brothers by Choice called hold on, let me get this right. I'm so bad with this. like I Gotta See Records. I just don't remember titles, but
right. I mean, there's a scene in the Radio Changed Lives of you going through the crates, going through the records and looking at the spine and knowing just the color and the label and the, you know what I'm saying? So it's definitely a very visual thing.
Right. I would set my records up and they would be, you know, I would know where everything was. Like I could just on instinct by looking at the spines, looking at the rips, looking at the generic 12-inch sleeves and whatnot. And then usually like I had like in the front of the crate, like I had a stack of new stuff right there that hadn't yet kind of gotten put into where it belongs. And really as a club DJ playing for decades off of vinyl, you your crates are like almost like an organism that just evolves over time, right? It's like you think of us like we lose dead cells and then we regenerate cells. That's like how we live. And it's kind of like that with records. Like, okay, these are coming in and those are going out, and it's interesting to see which records stay for forever and which don't. It's a trip. I mean, you know, Bob only plays vinyl to this day, and touring the world with Bob for our film, where we would do a screening and in Berlin one on a Saturday and maybe on a Sunday we'd be in Paris, and we'd come back to New York, and then the following weekend we'd go out, and we went out. We left the country like every weekend for several months. It was crazy. We had to be here in New York during the week for various responsibilities. But I have a sizable record collection. I've been buying records since the 80s, and hearing Bob spin vinyl and kind of being not reacquainted with, but just reminded how great vinyl sounds. You know, after that, you know, for the last 5 years, any opportunity I can, I play vinyl. I just love it, and it kind of forces a certain type of concentration that leads to, I think, more impactful DJing. Serato, you can really wing it with Serato if you're tired or if you're not feeling the energy. Like with records, like you really got to put it together and stay on top of these records, particularly if you're playing 7 inches, which those things come and go. I mean, it's like, it is stressful. If you're tired and you're playing 7 inches, you better get some coffee or something, because those records are relentless. They just but the record I was thinking of is called Baby You Really Got Me Going by Brothers by Choice. Okay. It's a record I've had for years, but I've re-fallen in love with it. It's not on Apple. It's just, you know, it's a funny thing for us to be on Apple and find that balance between playing records that are accessible and ones that aren't, because part of what we've always done is to put you onto things that you either don't know and maybe you can't even get unless you check us.
That's right. Now, Bob, you when you first started, people knew you for the on-air personality, but then you became Cucumber Slice and Cool Bob Love, and you went to DJing at APT, and some other parties in New York City, which became some of the classic parties. What made you decide, okay, because I understand now that I've spent a couple of years trying my hand at DJing in public, that is a courageous choice. What made you make this choice?
I mean, you know, similar to becoming a producer in the past, 2 years, where, I think I imagined one day I would become a producer, but I never knew when it was going to actually happen, right? And now me and Stretch are like producers. We have a band, M19s, we put out an album, No Request. We use elements of the band, doing original music to create remixes for Big L and Jay-Z's freestyle. It's all like uncharted territory for me. And similarly, back in like the 90s, the idea of DJing, where I thought I would one day become a producer, I never thought one day I'd become a DJ. I never thought one day I'd be a radio host. But then I found myself hosting, and, I'm a person who seizes opportunities, and I couldn't help but be inspired. I'm I'm 4 feet away from Stretch. I'm on a mic and Stretch is killing it. He's playing the Beatles and, you know, Tribe Called Quest blends, mashups. You know which one I'm talking about, right?
Wow. Okay.
No. When you play the Beatles, play the Beatles, when you play the Beatles Tribe mashup,
right? You're talking about
in 1990,
flying instrumental from Magical Mystery Tour. Yeah, I wasn't playing. I wanna hold your hand.
Yeah, no. I mean, you blended it with the Tribe, and I was like bugging out. So, you know, there was always these curveballs that Stretch would do, and then, you know, in terms technically, like, you know, it's blends and it's cuts. It was, you know, it's like when you're there every single week, that close to somebody. Mm-hmm. After a while, you're gonna just get some level of curiosity, like, yeah, like I think I want to do that too, you know,
right?
And not to say, like, you know, there's a lot of people that get curious about MCing that really shouldn't rhyme, you know, and there's people that DJ that really shouldn't DJ,
yeah,
you know.
Nice.
But I come from a musical family, and I'm a dancer, and I felt like I may not be the best that does this, but I think I have the right to try. And, you know, at that point, you know, the DJ world wasn't always welcoming, you know, and it wasn't easy to.
That's a good thing, I think.
No, it was a great thing. You know, you know, it's similar to, like, you know, people making music now as opposed to making music in the 90s. Like, it was a financial commitment to be an unsigned artist making demos in the 90s. You had to pay for studio time. You had to, you know, get your joint mastered if you want to press it up independently, but, you know, on and on and on. Same thing with DJing. It's like, if you want to DJ, you got to buy equipment, you got to buy records, you got to be in the shops, you got to be digging.
Yeah.
You know, it was like a huge commitment. So it wasn't easy for just anybody to make that passage.
Yeah.
But, you know, I was in the industry. I was in the community. I was of the culture. And, you know, I felt like I had something to offer that was different. And, you know, my first gig, in a big club in New York was with Rock Raider and Clark Kent and Louis Vega on the bill. Man. Like, imagine how much I was itting in my pants, you know? And then I was DJing eventually on me and Stretch's show. Imagine that, like the premier hip hop show in the world. And I'm behind the turntables, and I don't even have 2 turntables in my crib.
You on the turntables? The turntables?
I was on the turntables.
You said that twice.
I didn't have 2 turntables. I didn't even have 2 in my crib.
Were you nervous that I was listening?
Yeah, that was SHI *TTING. You know, like, imagine who's listening, you know. But eventually I got past that, and, you know, I want to be an okay DJ, and I want to, and you know, you're right. I want to do some mythical parties. APT, me and Spinner collaborated on Stevie Wonder tribute parties.
Oh, man.
Me and Stretch wound up doing
a series of parties.
Me and Stretch wound up doing you know, our anniversary parties. The one at Poisson Rouge in 2010 is like, it's mythical at this point. It's like, people who weren't there, like, talk about it as if it almost didn't happen.
Yes, that's right.
You know, and me and Rich's parties, you know, worldwide with our collaboration. And, you know, I can go on and on about, you know, phenomenal parties that I've done. And it's a blessing, you know, and I'm still learning. I'm still mesmerized by Stretch as a DJ. I'm still mesmerized by Rich, Medina, Spinner, you know, still, I don't get nervous like I used to, but there's still a part of me that's like, wow, I'm DJing with Stretch. Oh my God, I'm DJing with Clark Kent. You know, like, got a DJ with this dude looking at me, like, you know, but, you know, luckily they're friends and they're encouraging, and you know, we all have fun.
Absolutely. Now, you talked a lot about moving into the production space. A great part of the movie Radio Changed Lives is when Nas realizes that he was rapping on one of Stretch's beats. Stretch, you did tracks for Capone and Noriega, Tragedy, a lot of Queens rappers. First track of Lil Kim's debut, Big Mama Thing, features a verse by Jay-Z. Now, I've heard a story about this. Kim verse was maybe dissing Tupac and Faith Evans or something like that, and can you tell me about this? Because I only heard bits and pieces of the story.
Yeah, so it's great that you're asking me this question in 2020, because there was a full circle moment recently. But yeah, basically, you know, I was kind of I think I had what it took on the musical side, on the idea side, on the technical side to be a producer. When I say producer, I mean like a beat maker. Mm-hmm. I just didn't have the gusto, the self-confidence. I rarely really liked what I did. And then, I was just, bumping elbows with like the best producers in the world, like, Beat Miners, Q-Tip, Pete Rock, Large Professor, Beat Nuts. Like, right. These are my boys. I'm like, what am I doing? And of course, looking back, that was the wrong attitude to have, right? Because they were actually, all the aforementioned producers who heard what I was doing were incredibly supportive. But I also had a lot of other interests, and I just never really devoted the time to really nurture that part of my career. But I did come up with this beat that, to me, like said Lil Kim all over it. And, that the production label deal game back then was funny. As you probably know, a lot of people were getting deals, and they wanted to control the budgets so that they can, double dip and take credit and all that. And Craig Kalman, who was the president of Atlantic, now he's the chairman. He and I worked for him when Big Beat was his independent label back in '89. I played him that track, and he's like, "Oh, this Sylvester loop with the drums over it. It's perfect for Kim. Let me play it for Lance on Rivera." Right. And I knew Lance. I knew Jacob York. Like, but they weren't trying to have it. Yeah.
Not to cut you off, but we had 88 Keys on, and he told a story about how Craig Kalman would call him and explain and tell him which records he wanted him to loop. So it's funny that you said that he knew the loop. Like, that's what he was on, I guess.
Yeah. So Craig loved it, but the people in control of the record really weren't trying to have me be down, because I wasn't part of their clique, and Craig really, to his credit, he really pushed for it. We recorded it at Daddy's house. Actually, I laid the beat down at Chung King, and actually Lord Finesse came down. He hung out. Finesse is an absolute master on the sampler and the boards, so he was kind of giving me encouragement and a little bit of feedback. And then the vocals were recorded at Daddy's house. That's where Lil Kim came in to record in. And Biggie was there, and Biggie was, amazing. He was hilarious. He was funny. One session, Clark Kent was there, and the three of us were it was insane. Clark Kent is my DJ idol. He's like, yes. He's family now, and we were super cool back then. But in that moment, I was like, this is crazy. I'm here in the studio with Biggie and Clark Kent, and we're just having a great time while Kim was doing her vocals. Kim would not acknowledge me at all. Like, no hello, no, like, oh, that's the producer. She may have thought I was an intern at the studio, maybe an engineer, maybe I was a journalist. I don't even think she knew what I was doing there. She may not have even known that I made the beat.
Right.
So it was recorded. Her second verse, she's dissing Faith, dissing Tupac. Now, Craig needed Puffy to be cool with the record because they needed Biggie to be a part of all of the entertainment projects. So Puffy would have to sign off on that. Puffy had to be happy. And he got the demo. He was like, Kim dissing Faith, dissing Tupac? Nah, that's just not even possible. And then I don't even know how the idea to have Jay-Z do the middle verse happened, but it may have been around the same time that High School High soundtrack was being done, and
okay.
I think Jay was somehow involved in that. Was he? I'm not sure.
Good soundtrack.
But
my movie.
Shit movie, good soundtrack.
It was a good movie.
But I never saw it. But they got Jay-Z to do the middle verse. They paid him $10,000, which at the time to me seemed like a lot of paper. And his verse ended up being 2 or 4 bars shorter than Kim's. And I mixed the record, but I didn't know at the same time that Jacob York had another mix of the record. And they didn't edit out the blank 4 bars. And that's why you hear after Jay-Z's verse, just empty music before the chorus comes in.
Wow.
My version was Fly. My version obviously did not have those empty bars, and it also had Lord Finesse and I mixed it, so there were lots of delays and just
You should drop that for the people one day.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of like just mutes and just creative. And the record that came out was just a straight pass. But I always thought it was kind of funny that Kim just was like kind of like a sourpuss. Like she just wasn't wasn't gracious, wasn't cool at the time. Looking back, I understand like she was probably going through a lot of stress. She probably wasn't out of the hood yet. Like she had her own set of issues that I may have been unaware of. I was looking at this like through my own experience without considering what her life might have been like. So fast forward to last year, the Loud experience at Radio City. I don't know if you know about what went down there, but
no, I don't.
But yes, so Sean C. basically executive produced a Loud Records sort of reunion showcase, and it was at Radio City, and it was incredible. The atmosphere in Radio City was nothing but joy and love, and you're talking about like every person from the industry that cared about the music was there. Like every intern, every publicist, every A&R person that was really about it. For me, as someone who's occupied a certain space in this culture, I was just walking around saying hi to people, and I was getting name checked constantly. I mean, like the amount of love that I experienced in that room. Bob, you were out of town, you missed it. They actually wanted me and Bob to host the thing, but I didn't want to do it without Bob, so we didn't do it. Bob, you would have had the best time ever. It was incredible. At one point, exhibits on stage. Now I have like all access credentials, so I walk up straight down those carpeted paths to the front of the stage, and there's a little VIP area in the front where they got the usher standing there, and people are like, "Yo, Stretch, what up, Stretch? Yo!" Exhibits on stage, music is pumping, and I show the credential to the woman. She's like, "Nah, that doesn't work here. You can't come in here." I was like, "Word?" And exactly at that moment, Exhibit goes, "Stretch Armstrong, I see you, motherfucker." Yeah, like he just bigs me up crazy, and the whole place like, and I'm standing there like, I'm like, "That's me." Anyway, and she's like, "That's cool, but you can't come in here."
No.
I was like, "I'm good." Anyway, and ended up being on stage and just standing next to Pete Rock and watching the whole thing. But it was incredible. Lil Kim came out to do Quiet Storm, right? And it's crazy because of everyone that participated in this night, Kim and Fat Joe were really like celebrities amongst celebrities. Like they really, like people were like, like following them around. It was crazy. Like they really like, there were incredible artists. I mean, Wu-Tang was there, but Joe and Kim, people were just like obsessed with them that night. So Kim came out with the Mob. Mob did it 90s style. They were out there with like, I think they had 3 or 4 buses come from QB.
Right.
And they had 40 people on stage with them. It was like nothing has changed. And then Kim came out, the place erupted. And then afterwards, Kim, who had a bodyguard, she left the stage and sat down. And they were like, the bodyguard was like telling, even like a lot of the dudes from QB, like chill, like just let Kim just take her seat. And she was really near me. I was like, all right, this is my chance. This is my chance to address what happened in the studio.
I'm going to address it.
Years ago. And I was like, this could be an amazing moment, or this could go really south, like hard.
Yes.
So I went up to Kim. She was sitting in that chair. I got down on my knee and I was right next to her. I said, "Kim, hi, do you know who I am?" She's like, "You look familiar, but I don't. I'm sorry." She was very sweet. I was like, "I'm Stretch Armstrong." She's like, "Oh, hi, how you doing?" I was like, "Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but I produced Big Mama thing." It's like, yeah, of course. I was like, "Yeah, well, yeah, so, I just, you weren't very nice to me back then."
What'd she say?
She was like, I'm so sorry." I was like, it's all good. I know you were going through whatever, but it's great to put that behind us and see you and just congratulations on your decades of success and it's great to see you. And she gave me a hug and a kiss and we just chilled.
That's beautiful. That's
oh my God, I love it.
So it was like the moment was a little more Larry David than I'm conveying. It was like, yeah, you weren't that nice to me. I just want to put that out there. Shout out to Kim.
Yes, definitely.
Shout out Lil Kim. She was one of my favorite guests. I can't even imagine that she didn't speak to you back then, because not only was she so open during the interview, she actually watched one of my karaoke performances of her song. So double shout out to Lil Kim. Love her for life. You've worked with a lot of crazy big names. What made you decide that producing tracks for rappers wasn't the avenue that you wanted to go down?
I mean, I think I kind of addressed that already. I just wasn't, the process wasn't rewarding for me. I mean, I've always been really comfortable DJing. And even when I got the opportunity to be on the radio, I think there was a part of me that didn't feel like a young white man could properly represent this culture through his voice. I never questioned my taste in music and my musical judgment. Like I was 120,000% confident in assessing what I felt was music that should be championed and advocated for. But being in New York City, talking on the radio, like that didn't feel like something I wanted to do for the reason I just mentioned. But it's also because I just didn't have that kind of comfort doing that kind of thing. It was uncomfortable for me. And through the encouragement of even like Funkmaster Flex, who was like one of the first people that was telling me, like, you should talk as a DJ. You're not going to get the recognition that you deserve if you don't talk. And even Bob, like, it just became a thing that I eventually became comfortable with. But similarly, just I've never wanted to do things that didn't feel comfortable to me, and the whole process of making beats just there was always something about it that I think was really just because I didn't love what I was doing, and I liked other people's stuff more. I had a few glory moments where I'd play beats that I mean, the Nas example, that was an incredible moment for me. But it didn't lead to me making more tracks. It was like, maybe that was enough. Like Nas loved your beat. Amazing. There's something very kind of pure. Huh?
Let me interject, because interestingly enough, right, that's where we left off, or that's where you left off in the 90s, but it's 2020 and your hip hop producer hat is completely back on.
I was going to go there.
Okay, good. I want to make sure that we're not stuck in the past.
Yeah, so
that's a true friendship right there.
But then when I did Big Mama Thing, and that became, that was bootlegged by whoever was supplying all the bootlegs to Rock and Soul and other 12-inch shops. That was like a street hit, Big Mama Thing. Like that was out there. And when that happened, I remember Damon Dash and Jay-Z hitting me up like, "Yo, what's up? What do you got?" And that was the moment, right? You got to take these opportunities when they present themselves. And that was simultaneously the first time when just everything about hip hop in that moment was starting to feel like a chore to me. And when the industry started really becoming an industry, how it was. Like when there was no money in it, people were in it for the beats, for the rhymes, for the girls, for the parties, for the clubs, for a little bit of money. But once it became real money, who started, really trying to get that money? It was like people that were, hustlers. They went from the street to the hip hop industry, and that was one element. It was also, people that weren't a part of the culture trying to dictate where the culture went. And these are the kinds of people now you find I found myself having to kind of like interact with. And I think I was maybe, you know, because what Bob and I were doing on the radio for so many years was such a pure oasis, doing something that involved having to interface with people that didn't have the same intentions that we had. It just felt laborious to me. It just felt like it just wasn't appealing. And I think, you know, that might be a really naive perspective, but I think that's what was going on. Anyway, yeah, like to what Bob said, like, you know, we've got our band the M19s and you know, I had this idea to isolate the acapellas from these recordings and remix them. And, you know, when I brought that to Bob, I was like, that's incredible. Can we do it? And I was like, I don't know if we can do it. I know the technology is there to isolate.
We have the technology.
We have the technology, but I know that I knew that we need to be working from uncompressed audio. And I know anything that's recorded over the FM sound waves is going to be compressed. So how much separation are we going to get? How much artifact noise are we going to get? Shout out to the Artifacts.
Shout out to the Artifacts.
That really
we played some
remained to be
Artifacts
seen.
records on that went right after Earthquake was rapping on that show.
And, so I got the acapellas. We had Joe Run Bombay in Halifax prepared the audio because he's like this technical demon. He's incredible and technical wizard, not a demon. And I got the raw acapella tracks and I listened to them. I was like, wow, these sound horrible. Like without a beat over them, they just sound. There's just like phasing, there's like EQ changes, there's levels that are going all over the place. Like this is going to take a lot of surgery. And the first thing I did was I just started taking some instrumentals from great 90s tracks and put them underneath these acapellas. And within 30 seconds, I knew that it was going to work. Like as soon as the beat went over the acapellas, it's like, oh, all the transient issues, the places where there's artifact noise, that all gets disguised when drums go on top of the tracks. And I sent Bob a little 30-second snippet of Jay-Z and Big L rhyming over this. And he was like, what? So, and then I was like, okay, now I got to really, I haven't sampled tracks and sequence beats since the 90s. Let's see what happens here.
Yeah.
And I'm a much more confident person now. I think I'm musically much more sophisticated. And of course, we've got, you know, decades of music that's influenced us. I mean, just my mental space is just it's in such a different place than I was in, you know, 1995, 1996.
Yeah.
And I'm really pleased with what we created. And we can't wait to share it with the world. I think the stuff's available now as we speak.
Yeah.
To even it out, you know, not only did we grab the acapella versions of Big L, Jay-Z, Method Man, Ghostface, and Biggie from our 90s archive, but we also have Nas's freestyle, Big Pun and Fat Joe, Mobb Deep, Mad Skills with Q-Tip, OC with Pharoah Monch and Large Professor doing it on an SP. I mean, on and on and on. So think about the very, you know, like highest level live moments in our radio history, you know, that were featured in our film, Stretch Bobito Radio Changed Lives. And we're going to release an album of like 20 of these freestyles, digitally remastered
and revitalized and reimagined
and remixed with, you know, with elements of our band, the M19s. And it kind of just, it's like the best culmination of everything. Cause it's like, we get to celebrate our past without being stuck in it, you know, and we get to introduce people to our band, the M19s, you know, that we released this incredible album with in January titled No Request. The pandemic hit. We had a whole tour, you know, booking agent, the whole thing completely squashed, you know, and so the album kind of got derailed and didn't get the attention that I think we could have garnered had we been out there, like, you know, doing interviews locally and getting people hyped. You know, our first show was at the Kennedy Center. Our first show was at the Kennedy Center and it sold out 2 shows. And then we did the Gramercy Theater in New York City. So, you know, we're really excited about what we're doing now. You know, 2020, we're excited about celebrating our 30th anniversary. And then we got the Apple Music, hits radio show. So it's like me and Stretch are like, yo, we're like pumping it. Like, we talk every single day, multiple times a day, not just about like, yo, what did you eat? Like, yo, did you respond to the PR? Did you,
Right.
We got this interview tomorrow. Yo, we got to submit the remix. Oh, it's dropping on, it's like, whoa, like,
Right.
it's a crazy time for us in the most beautiful and invited way.
That's beautiful. Now shout out to Funkmaster Flex. I don't know if y'all know this, but I started my career working with Flex and carrying crates and working with.
You told me in Brazil on the beach.
That's right.
Remember that day? Yeah.
Wait, whoa. Brazil on the beach. Where was I?
Yeah, we had a gig. Bobito gave me a
10
phrase
years ago.
And when we was in Rio de Janeiro that I still use to this day. No forgive action is the phrase that you gave me. Because we were talking about like stepping on shoes and whatnot. He was like, that's no forgive action, B.
Did a Brazilian step on your shoes?
What shoes were you wearing?
Bob had on some like Air Force Ones on the beach. I was just like, that's some New York shit.
With the toes cut out?
Not even,
Air Force
like,
One sandals?
He was just stomping in his Air Force Ones.
Yo, I've never been to Brazil.
Get this stumping in my Air
I'm tight
Force
about that.
Ones.
We got to schedule that back up after this COVID lockdown.
We do. If anyone in Brazil is listening, I want to come down and DJ with Bob.
That's right.
Let's
but
go.
I bring up Flex
With Talib.
because, I would love to DJ with y'all. But I bring up Flex because he gave you that wonderful advice, and I used to work with him. And Flex called me recently, and he expressed regret at not playing certain records at the height of his career. He was like, when I was, I came up under Marley Marl, and I was trying to make DJing big for everybody. I was trying to make DJing big for the other DJs, for the culture. And so I was trying to play big records, big hits, and that's the mentality I was in. And so, there's records that would come out from you and Black Thought and other artists that people would be like, this is real hip hop, this is real hip hop. But I didn't play these records. I was in a different phase. Now, listeners to the show, I remember I'll be completely frank and completely straight up. There was a time when Stretch, you as a DJ went very much into this like sort of grimy street life rap bag. And so for me, as an artist coming up in that time, I was starting to get my name known. I knew that if Bobito was spinning, I could more likely hear a Talib Kweli record or something like a lyrical miracle rapper record from a Bob set than from a Stretch set. And so I kind of want to know from both of y'all, what made you go into that zone at that time in your life? And Bob, what was happening in your life where you're like, I'm trying to move away from that and try to play more sort of, I won't say abstract or alternative, but things that in your mind were more hip hop.
Since Bob got the last word in our film and made me look bad, he can go first.
I mean, I don't think I discounted what Stretch was playing as not hip hop, ever. But I was of the mind to provide an alternative to what, that's the only way I was going to grab space in the DJ pantheon that I was living in, was to play something that was different than everybody else was playing. Cause I wasn't going to outcut Stretch or, Rob Swift. I wasn't going to outblend Rich Medina and Spinner. I wasn't going to have more rare records than Kenny Dope or Citizen King. You know what I'm saying? Like, I had to find my space. So my space was like, there's some incredible MCs that, looking back now, like I listen to some of the records that I might have played in 98 and 97 where I'm kind of like, maybe I was paying too much attention to the written and not to the expressed, rhythmic rhymes as well as the beats. But I don't regret playing any records. I mean, I have saved them or would play them now, but at the time it felt like they needed to be heard. They felt like they needed to be heard. And I mean, I wouldn't put you in the same space with some of the other artists. Like I could stand by a Reflection Eternal record or a Black Star record or a Talib solo record, 22 years later, like I'm good. But there's other records that I was kind of like, they were just, Stretch would make fun of me. Like the lyrical meter was like too much dipping into the red.
The syllable meter. The syllable meter's in the red.
Yeah, the syllable meter. But I mean, it was what the time was. And, you know, similar to what Flex was saying, you know, I had a voice, right? And I had a big influence on MCs and how they recorded. And I would tell some of them, like, yo, get off your high horse. Like, because you're being repetitive. All you're talking about is whack MCs. New Eureka Post Cafe, every verse was about whack MCs. I'm not whack.
Ubiquitous whack MC that we all hate is the bane of our existence as a lyrical
Yeah,
rapper.
it was just like everybody was being repetitive, and people were really not being as original as they thought they were being. They were being reactionary. It was like everybody was like reacting to, oh, you know, these big suits and our music is getting commercialized, so we're going to keep it real. We're going to keep it extra real. But meanwhile, like, people lost like the funk and the dance aspect of independent rap, which was like every independent rap record. If you listen to me and Stretch show in the 90s, if you see footage of us in the 90s or 91, people are dancing in our studio.
Y'all dancing. Yeah.
WKCR was like literally like sheets and pillows inside like the size of a bedroom studio.
Right.
You know, it was a party, you know, and that's because all the independent rap records that Stretch was championing were danceable. You know, he could play them in a club or he could play them on the radio. It was no different. That divide became very, very wide by 97, 98, where like any indie hip hop record was like not danceable at all. It was like 82 BPMs and just super lyrical.
Super slow to fit all the syllables.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You're right. It was. And, so, you know, between my label, I was putting out records like that. I was playing records like that. You know, I was putting MCs on. Yeah. You know, I had the open mics at New Eureka Poets Cafe. I was hosting Lyricist Lounge. So I was like, you know, very much like this sort of, I became like this sort of, Pied Piper for like ultra lyrical MCs, which I feel good about. But, you know, I was advocating just the same for, you know, there was a record I played it on me and Stretch's IG Live like a couple weeks ago. I don't remember the name of the artist right now, but the dude wasn't ultra lyrical. It was like a dope ass record that could have came out in 87 just the same. And I was championing that record. And there were other records that were like that, you know, but I probably, you know, if I knew Stretch was going to play it, I didn't feel like I need to play it.
Okay.
So
I think the idea that Bob was just playing like super lyrical indie stuff and I was just playing like hard street rap, that's a little bit of a caricature, because there were plenty of records that I played that were an exception to that. Just like Bob said, there are records that I'm sure there are records even as late as 97 or 98 that I would play, but I'll be like, oh, that's dope. For me, I think, and you know, I say this in our doc, and it's true. I really didn't pay that much attention to lyrics. I was more interested in rhythm and just the overall kind of feel of music. And sometimes I felt like the overly lyrical music felt like it was calling too much attention to the lyrics and to the content of what was being said, rather than how a voice interacts with a beat in kind of a funky syncopated way. And I felt like just a lot of the stuff that I just liked on a musical level was harder. It was, you know, more like you said, like street rap. And you know, there are other things going on in my life that kind of, sorry, my dog is wilding, that coincided with that. I mean, I had a really strong friendship with Tragedy, and that was kind of my link to a lot of the Queensbridge guys. Even,
right. Of
course, you know, we go back, you know, with P and Have, even before they were Mobb Deep. You know, I was always kind of, I always got a lot of love in the Bridge because of my support for the music that came out of it. And I think that just automatically happened because I revered, you know, the sort of the mythical importance of the Bridge and Marley Marl and et cetera, which was only consolidated by the emergence of a young Nasty Nas. I mean, I'd go to Queensbridge to visit Traj or Havoc, and yo, not for nothing, like I'd go on the basketball court as the sun was going down, and like 30 kids would come up to talk to me. It was amazing. And you know, that was the same time when they would be, they just tell me like, yo, such and such. They won't even come out here. You would. That's amazing. Like, yo, and it was just, again, that goes back to like my father, right? Like, I'm going to Queensbridge.
Right.
Why wouldn't I go to Queensbridge? Right. I've been like, first of all, like I grew up like you could practically see Queensbridge from where I grew up on the east side. And the music that came out of there, Marley Marl and I, we share a birthday. I got to know Marley in the 90s, and he's always super cool with me, which is always super trippy because when people ask me who your heroes are, I sometimes feel like I don't really have heroes, but Marley Marl would be one of them. So I think that played a role in it. But, there's also another factor, and was this kind of subliminal friction between me and Bob. Like he knew how to annoy me, and I knew how to annoy him. And we were being very passive aggressive through the music because, until Bob brought it up at Hot 97, was like, yo, my man, like neither of us are happy with this. Should we just go separate ways? There was a long time before that when we weren't addressing it. And I think because both of us could not accept the fact in some way that things had really changed, because what we had prior to them changing was so special, and to acknowledge it and to really kind of act on it, I think was I don't know, scary, sad, whatever. So we, maybe we were thinking like this might pass, maybe the music will get like incredible again, and like hip hop will save the day. So yeah, I enjoy playing records that Bob would be like inside, oh my God, I hate this song. Why is he playing it? I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna double up the top for 3 minutes. And I think Bob, he knew what would get under my skin. And some of Bob's antics on the mic, he knew would annoy me and would do it gleefully. So there was that aspect as well. And then for me, like, I think both Bob and I both came to a point when we were like, you know what? The music that's coming out, it's just not speaking to me in a way that it did when we first got on the radio. And maybe this doing the radio isn't for us right now. Maybe, someone else that is really, really feeling it would be better suited to doing this. And that's a very mature conclusion to come to, because it's hard to give up radio in New York. I mean, how many people want to be on the radio in New York and don't get a chance? And here we are, mature enough to accept that this isn't for us right now. Right. So let's step away. I mean, I'll be honest, like I was struggling with being on Hot 97. I wasn't enjoying it, but in all honesty, I didn't let it go. I was canned. But I think me being canned was in response to me clearly just going through the motions and just showing up and not really being that into it. But KCR is really the more important thing for us to talk about, because we're here together. In about 98, that's when I tapped out. And, I wasn't even exploring music. I wasn't looking for things. I wasn't getting records. It's funny now, I'll come across records online, on Discogs, on YouTube or whatever, looking at playlists from DJs and listening to things and be like, oh, that's amazing. What is that? Like, oh, that came out in 99. That came out in 98. I never got that record. Now maybe, there's a cycle that goes here. Like if I'm not playing it, then why is an independent operation that's got to spend real money on getting the records pressed, why are they going to even bring it to me if I'm not going to play it? And so I missed out on a lot of music that I think would have given me the satisfaction of playing music that people need to hear, that I just wasn't aware of back then. And certainly, hindsight is 2020. I think both of us would have done things differently. I'm just proud of the fact that, for a good 7 years, I gave it my all. And then moonwalked out the picture.
I want to go back. So this is the Eric Payday record called Melanie that that I was championing back then. I don't know any other DJs that were playing it. And it even goes back to the Apple Music Hits question where, I will play this on Stretch and Bobito radio on Apple Music Hits. I doubt it's in their universe. And I hope that maybe they like, wow, this is a cool song. Let's figure out who's the rights owner and they, put it up. And then while I was looking for this record, because it was, I just came across Talib Kweli, Get By.
Is that a white label,
12
Get By?
inch. Yeah. And then I got this. I know Black Star's about to drop with new music. Mm-hmm. And then I came across my High Tech Technology record. And then my other I think Get By is like your greatest work.
Yes.
Ever. It's one of my favorite hip hop records, period. But Respiration as well. I just came across this 12 inches is another really, really phenomenal record.
Those pieces of vinyl are the foundation of my career.
Yeah.
In your catalog, yeah. So anyway, I just figured I'd just big you up. These are all records that I was playing.
Nas said in Radio That Changed Lives that he made Illmatic with the Stretch and Bob audience in mind. Can you break down exactly what that means to you? And I know it's easy to be biased, but where does that album fall on your on the greats?
I think he said I wrote most of my album listening to your show.
If there's ever a compliment from an MC about our radio show, I think that would be it.
Yeah. That's a big one.
That's a big one.
Because that album is seen as, that album has left, is firmly planted in the world of hip hop. When you talk about the greatest albums of the world from any genre of music, Illmatic is a strong contender for the top of that category, the top 10, top 20, top 30 greatest albums ever made of any genre. And for him to be like, I made that album while I was listening to Stretch and Bob. It's a lot. It speaks a lot to the mentality of what he was trying to convey, because everybody in hip hop thinks of Nas as being the sort of the poet who was in the hood in uncomfortable, unfortunate circumstances, who was sitting by his window and writing what people was going through. And even Nas raps about his mother had the plates for everybody. People in the projects felt comfortable coming over his house, but it didn't stop him from getting involved in the shenanigans. And the Stretch and Bob show was, to me, when Nas made that statement, Nas saying, there's something bigger out there. There's something more than what I'm seeing in this 6-block Queensbridge radius. And this radio show that I have to struggle to get on the right dial, to get the FM signal, this radio show that I'm struggling to get, this is showing me that there's another world out there. Mm. I don't know if I ever told y'all the story about how me and High Tech almost beat up a guy because I was trying to listen to, y'all were going to play the Fortify Live or something. Y'all going to play like 2,000 seasons of Fortify Live. Me and High Tech had landed from Japan because we had started touring by this time, and landed at JFK. There was a guy, I think he was Russian. Excuse me. And when you land in JFK, they have the signs in New York where they say, do not get in a car with someone who's not a cab driver. Yeah. Well, this story is why they have these signs, right? So the guy was like, for $20, I'll bring you to Brooklyn. I was like, $20, that was a cheap price even back then, to come from the airport. He drove us, and I was leaning over the partition to try to get 89.9 on the radio. And I was just getting static. And High Tech, who's from Cincinnati, was like, yo, we going the wrong way. Oh, and I was so focused on trying to, because I didn't want to miss y'all playing the record. I was so focused on trying to get the radio station that I dismissed High Tech. I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm from Brooklyn. You from Cincinnati. You don't know. And the guy stopped at a bodega. And I was like, why you stopping? He's like, I got to go grab some. So that was weird. He ran into the bodega. And it was like in Brownsville, which was coming to where I was living in Flatbush. You had to go out of your way to get to Brownsville from the airport. And I was like, yo, why maybe we was in East New York. It was so one of the neighborhoods we had to go out the way. And the guy got in the car, and I'm still trying to figure out the radio situation. And the cab driver bent over and tried to smoke crack while he was driving.
Oh my God.
So what that meant was, because when I gave him that $20, and that's when I realized that drug addiction is a sickness. It's a sickness. Because when I put that $20 in that man's hands, he could have easily dropped us off and then gotten his fix. But the moment that 20 hit his hands, he drove straight to the crack spot and was trying to smoke while driving secretly.
Oh,
and
my
me and
God.
Hatek got frustrated and furious. And I remember kicking the back of the seat and like, pull the car over, pull the fucking car over right the fuck now. And we was on Eastern Parkway. I opened up the door. We had the doors open so we could stop. We stopped and me and Hatek chased him around the car for like 3 minutes. Chasing this guy around the car. The police showed up. We told our side of the story. He told his side of the story. The cop was like, that's between y'all. I have nothing to do with this. Cop left.
Oh my goodness.
You know what I'm saying? I was like, yo, he stole our money. He won't give me the money back. The guy was like, y'all ain't give me no money. Y'all give me $20. I'm like, I gave you $20. You bought some crack. Yo, all because I wanted to get my record on Stretch
and ran, Talib.
Yo, that is the
That's crazy.
Story. We've heard crazy stories. That is the
I didn't even remember
story.
that story until just now. I didn't even have it in my notes to bring it up. I totally forgot about that story until this moment. Right now.
I've got a great Stretch and Bob story that I learned yesterday.
Okay.
So we put out a call to our listeners and our followers to submit audio that we could then play on the radio. So it could be a shout out, it could be a Stretch and Bob story, whatever. We need a drop from you. And
okay.
And if you could ask Dave to do one as well, that'd be incredible.
Okay, yeah.
But so this guy said, he said, Stretch and Bob, you guys are responsible for me being with my wife, and because of that, for being the father to my children. And I want to tell you how. He's at college in New Jersey at Rutgers. In his dorm, he doesn't get the station well. He knew this. He knew a young woman. Knew a young woman in another dorm, and they got the station.
All these stories, by the way, are because we couldn't get the good signal with the station.
Yeah. And she listened to our radio show, so he would go over there basically every Thursday night, and they fell in love, got married. The way he tells the story is so sweet, Bob. It's in the Dropbox folder.
That's beautiful. Bob is crying.
Yeah. No, it really. I'm not doing it justice the way I'm telling it because it didn't happen to me. Right. But it's a very sweet story. No crack involved.
I was waiting for the crack part, to be honest.
Just ask
They
crack.
fell in love and then they did crack.
Now, one of my favorite parts of the movie, the Radio Changed Lives movie, is I must have fell out on the floor when this happened. When Bobito shows up to Jay-Z with the bag full of the tapes, and Jay-Z's like, why you got all them tapes? You carry that around in a bag? And I just was like, yo, Jay-Z was so shocked that people carry things in bags. I was like, yo, it's crazy. I was like, he's been rich for a long fucking time. He's like, yo, wait a second, so you have a bag that you carry tapes in? And then when he's this is classic Jay-Z that you caught on film. Because Jay-Z is very, very arrogant rapper. It's part of his personality. And as you playing him the freestyle, and he's listening to the tape, and he does that Jay-Z nod, that Jay-Z. He goes, and he's like, pretty good, Jay-Z. I was like,
he takes the headphones off. Pretty good verses. Pretty good
verses, Jay-Z.
So funny.
Like, yo, he's got a different voice to talk to him, to talk about himself.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Yeah, it's fucking hilarious. Was it surreal to see him go back to that sort of innocent place before he was Jay-Z the billionaire?
I mean, I think from a director standpoint, that moment exceeded all expectations because to give you background, I mean, it took 18 months to book Jay to get him on camera, and that's exactly the amount of time that it took us to produce the film. Like we conceived the film in January 2014 and we had to put it out before, October 2015 because that was our 25th anniversary. We interviewed Jay-Z.
Peep it. Like, I think like 6 weeks, maybe 4 weeks before Locking Picture, we did not have Jay-Z. We did not have Nas. We didn't have Buster.
Eminem.
And we didn't Eminem, Royce. And we didn't have Be Real. I mean, like the last month, we were shaking and baking crazy.
Yeah. So that's, first, the film was incredible without Jay-Z, Nas, and Busta, Eminem, and Be Real. And then when we got them in the final weeks before we locked picture, the film went like an extra Super Duty level. But truth be told, like when we got to Jay's office, it was similar to you with Lil Kim. Like they were like, yo, you got 10 minutes with Jay. That is it. We can have 3 people in the room. And we were like, yo, this is a proper like film that's going to be like broadcast internationally, like theaters, everything. Like, you know, we need, you know, audio, we need B-roll, we need, you know, like camera setup, you know, we can't just come in there with 3. So like, it was a lot to finally get him there. And then he walks in and he sat with us for like 45, 50 minutes. Like I hadn't seen Jay-Z since February 25th, 1995,
right,
when he came up with Big L. Like that was the last time I saw dude. It'd been 20 years. So, you know, and then for him to receive us the way he did and for him to get into the interview the way he did. But, you know, it was very calculated on our parts. Like me and Stretch, you know, had the idea to present people with not just a freestyle digital, no, like cassette tactile experience. Like Nas didn't even remember how to do rewinds on a Walkman when we gave him the, I don't think that made the film, but he was having problems like pressing the buttons
in the
rewind
Jay-Z
the
Nas Walkman battle. Jay-Z is the victor. Jay-Z he grabbed it,
Jay-Z
the
was
tape,
nice with the Walkman.
he put it in. It was it was just like fluid.
Yeah.
And Nas was like, "What's going on here? What is this? What do I do with these 2 objects?"
But Jay was bugging that I still had cassettes, you know, and I mean, you know, as often people do, but I'm an analog dude, you know, like I love my cassettes and, you know, it was a win for us to have people transport to their childhood and their youth by giving them a cassette of their own voice, you know, some of which, you know, some of the freestyles that we played for people in a film, they didn't even remember doing them. They were like, wait, I did this? Like, wait, what verse is this? You know?
Yeah,
they were verses that never made their album, so they forgot about them, you know?
Fat Joe was tripping off the pun.
Yeah, Fat Joe started crying.
He started crying, yeah. He
started crying, yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard that.
It was incredible to see people. It's like getting into a time machine and going back into a moment when the craft just meant so much to them, and finally they got this opportunity to do what they've been working so hard at for years and share that with the tri-state area.
And to bring it forward to 2020, like when people hear what we did to these classic freestyles, like it's been unthinkable to hear these freestyles with different music underneath it.
Yeah.
It's like someone handed us Stevie Wonder Intervision's multi-tracks, you know, and we're like, do whatever you want with them. It's like having the acapella version of Big L and Jay-Z. We also got music videos too. Like the same dude who was art director for Stretch and Bobito, Radio That Changed Lives, and my last film, Rock Rubber 45s, directed and art directed the Big L Jay-Z music video, as well as the Biggie video. And you want to really talk about surprises, like no one's really heard the Biggie freestyle from our radio show. We only did like a small excerpt in our film because of fair use laws, but we have officially licensed everything from the Wallace family. We have the rights to it. And, you know, when it gets streamed, you know, like money will go into the Wallace family's, you know, pockets.
You better pay Big Mama for using his lyrics. Pay Big Mama for using his lyrics.
So it's wonderful for us to you know, to do this, because like all the, you know, how many people have heard the Big L Jay-Z freestyle since it was released, and Big L's family has never received a penny for it. You know, I mean, it's pushed his name, and hopefully it's pushed his released material, but now it's like the Big L Jay-Z freestyle, the Big L's family will monetize that finally.
Well, luckily with the way streaming is set up, they'll make at least $500.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
right.
Yeah, go out and download the record like Talib was saying, and we're going to release 7 inches of all these records, you know, 7-inch box sets, you know, 12 inches, CDs, cassettes, all that. So that's all forthcoming.
Word
up.
you were just talking about Fat Joe, and in your radio that changed lives, he was talking about how you guys gave exposure to making millions. Did it ever make things tough or frustrating to see people getting rich off the platform that you created? And are there certain rappers who recognize that and send you like really nice bottles of wines out of the blue or anything?
Jay-Z does owe me a bottle of champagne. Because when we got on Hot 97, he said that he had one for me, and I never got that bottle. But
ooh, Jay-Z, come on now!
I didn't remind him.
He found out Cristal was racist, so he stopped dealing with that. So.
Oh, he said it again. What?
He said then Jay-Z found out Cristal was racist, so it's like I can't give Stretch a bottle of Cristal. You got about an Ace of Spades coming for you, I'm sure.
But no, for every Jay-Z or Fugees or DMX or Mobb Deep, there are 30 incredible artists that didn't get rich, that some of them never even had careers, artists that we really thought would. So no, that never really played a role in what we were doing. We were so focused on the show that if an artist that had come through went on to being huge, it was like, cool. They kind of graduated. It was like we were like elementary school. They graduated and went on and did their thing. There was always, it was a revolving door. There was always the next coming up, and that's what we were interested in. If an artist that had become really successful wanted to come back, that was amazing. But we knew what the ecosystem was about. If you have a certain amount of success, you're going to be on MTV, you're going to be on Hot 97, and you're going to be busy doing those things. I mean, our show was not the easiest thing to put on your schedule. It was 1 to 5 in the morning. It was like this was for the hungry. So if you had a little food in your belly, like you're going to go to the next spot, and we were fine with that, and we were proud to see artists that we were supporting, years before they came out, get signed and get the accolades and the success that they deserve. That just felt great.
One thing that we did not discuss in our film but that was shared in some of the interviews was how we supported this sort of, and I mentioned it earlier, was like this ecosystem. So Fat Beats as a record shop and an eventual distribution hub for indie hip hop records, wouldn't have caught the fire that it did if it wasn't for our support.
That's right.
And a lot of artists, caught their first gigs overseas because me and Stretch were pivotal in working with promoters. That's right. Mass Influence,
Shout out
High
to
and
Mass
Mighty.
Influence.
We can go on with a lot of artists who came through our show. We liked them, and then by virtue of that, we're able to. MF Doom, ignited a career 24 years long now, based off of the demos that we played back in 96, 97. Right. And so we got the thank yous on Redman's album, Fuji's album, but we're like first names and the thank yous and the liner notes, and there were other, many other artists who have thanked us graciously. But in terms of financial rewards, that's never been what we were in for. And in terms of expectations, I don't think either of us ever we were happy with people just, showing gratitude. That's all.
Yeah.
And Bob shared how gracious Jay was with his time. I feel like the artists really, they looked out for us, the ones that participated. Bob had established a certain narrative for the film, and we were looking for stories from artists, and not just artists, but artists, listeners, and other people to plug into that narrative. And so we weren't trying to get everybody that was important to the show in the movie. I think some people felt like, oh, how come they didn't include me? It really wasn't. It wasn't meant to be. We're going to interview every artist that we liked. It was a specific narrative, and once we achieved that narrative with the artists that availed themselves to us, we were able to wrap the movie. But the ones that did, particularly Eminem, Jay, Nas, Busta, artists of a certain caliber. I mean, they were incredibly generous with their time and with what they said. The sentiment of what they shared was amazing and really moving. But it wasn't filling some kind of void that we felt for not having had the recognition or the thanks.
Yeah.
We listen. Doing that show was incredibly fun. Like we got so much out of it. Like aside from what it meant for our careers, just doing it was incredible. Bob and I, we didn't come up through like a mentor-mentee system. I wasn't carrying records for a radio DJ and waiting for my chance to get on. We were fans that were sort of catapulted onto this platform that we made the most of, but it never felt like we didn't have 1 foot inside, but still 1 foot outside. We were like, it was trippy for us to be in that role. And that was just an incredibly lucky position for us to be in. So we got everything out of it.
But yeah, how does the adage go? The adage is, if you do what you love for a living, you'll never work a day in your life. And I think that y'all exemplify that. Now, me coming from an activist background, one of the most interesting parts of what you said in the film, Bob, was talking about how you found yourself talking to people in jails and how you found yourself talking people out of doing crimes or people who may have just committed a crime. As Stretch, you spoke about going to Queensbridge and feeling the impact of kids coming up to you and being like, yo, no one's ever come out here to see us. How did it feel for y'all to be thrust into the role model position, community leadership positions, when y'all were just trying to spin some jams?
I mean, I accepted it immediately. And, I had been, I started coaching basketball. People don't know this about me, but I started coaching basketball when I was 15 years old. Mm-hmm. Like why the program director trusted me to lead 11-year-olds. I don't know. I think he just saw in me that I would be, able to, be a positive influence and teach them skills. So when I became a public figure on a radio, it was a immediate sensibility of like kick in, like, oh, I got a voice now. And plus, I mean, remember I worked at Def Jam. So, I worked with Chuck D. Like,
right.
Public Enemy was a group that, to me was larger than life. And then boom,
you're supposed to say Public Enemy, Chuck D? Yeah, he's a friend of me.
But that's how I said, we had 1 foot in and 1 foot out. It was like when I was working at Def Jam, my foot out was still like kind of in awe of like, someone like Chuck who had such impact on people's mentality, and their awareness of as people of color, as Black people, as human beings, right? And so, it was easy for me to step into that space and be like, oh, word, like I'm not an MC, but I'll handle this. And also for the fact, like, I didn't tout this on the radio, but I didn't drink, I didn't smoke. I was always up there with like really clear, like poignant, conscious and I had friends who were activists, like, front line, like my peoples were in the National Congress of Puerto Rican Rights. I was like boys with like Luis Garza Acosta, a former young lord. I wound up coaching for the high school that he was a principal at. So, I'm infusing those sort of like relationships and knowledge into the radio in time. It wasn't like immediate, but as I felt comfortable in my space and as I felt like the audience was able to, accept more than just us playing music. And that's going to happen with Apple Music hits as well. Stretch and Bobito Radio first episode that dropped October 22nd is primarily music. As we go along and we take longer mic breaks and people start trusting us, you're going to hear Stretch's endorsements for local politicians who are running for office. They're going to hear, my affiliations. With our band, the M19s, our music video for the Mexican, of our first album was completely advocating immigration and refugee rights, with footage from a documentary about the passage from Central America to the United States. And, with our upcoming single, Que Bonita Bandera, is celebrating the 125th anniversary of the founding of the Puerto Rican flag, prior to the colonization of the island, and there are lyrics that are banned and the featured vocalists are going to be singing that are going to like blow people's minds. The music video that is directed for that is going to blow people's minds. It's imagery of protest against, Ricky, Roselio, the former governor who got ousted. There's footage of the hurricane. There's footage of, all the things that people have endured on the island and throughout the diaspora of Puerto Rico. And so, we constantly, Stretch and I, for 30 years, have been the funny, comical dudes, but similar to having one foot in one in and one foot out. We've constantly infused people with knowledge, and awareness, and in some cases, plausible steps for action, through our various platforms. And we did that with NPR. We're going to do that with Apple Music Hits. And, we're going to continue to do that with our music releases, with the archival releases, maybe not so much, cause it's of the era. We want to capture the era. So, me and Stretch talked at length, like, do we keep these lyrics that were okay at the time, but the language that we have in 2020, they're kind of unacceptable. There's a lot of back and forth, because not everybody was politically correct as MCs in the 90s. And we're grabbing that and catapulting it into 2020 with these remixes, but I think our head was in the right space, and we have created some radio edits, that didn't exist at the time because it was just live. You didn't edit somebody rhyming on a mic. So anyway, I'll talk for a lot. Yeah. I'm sorry, Stretch. Let me give you space to respond.
I don't completely know how to answer that question other than in the 90s, I think I was a role model just because of how I conducted myself, right? I don't think that I ever really, did I code switch? Absolutely. When I was on the radio, with Bob and Sear and Benji and everybody, sure. There's a hip hop as a coded language that even white people in hip hop are going to adopt. But with that being said, I never tried to front like I was anybody that I wasn't. And I think that's something that really resonated with listeners and kind of engendered a kind of respect from really everybody. And that's why I could go to a Queensbridge and no one was going to step to me, because I wasn't acting like a tough guy. I wasn't acting like I grew up in a black neighborhood. You know what I mean? Like I never had those airs that some white people in hip hop might have, right? I was comfortable in my own skin. I was comfortable being like the skinny, nerdy white guy with like a really bad haircut and often really bad glasses. That was fine. I was so about the music that nothing else, really mattered. I think my own kind of awakening really has taken place in a much more intense way. I think partially because of how in our faces problems in our society are via social media, but also since moving to Bed-Stuy, since being in a traditionally black neighborhood, has really provided a lot of food for thought. And, I came out into this neighborhood really looking for more space for the buck, right? I lived in Manhattan my whole life. And I came out here and I wasn't sure about moving to Brooklyn. My mother, she's a lovely Polish woman, said there's an expression from where she comes from, which is never move to the other side of the river. So I kept that in mind when I moved to Brooklyn, and really I was hyper self-aware of feeling like I was part of a gentrification movement coming out here. And that I didn't like that. I didn't really know how to deal with that, because I think you know, I know who I am and I know what I mean to a lot of people, but walking down the street, you might not know who I am, and even the fact of who I am, you know, in hip hop culture, that doesn't really mean anything when it comes to the bigger conversations around the economics and racial aspects of gentrification, right? That doesn't, I don't get a pass for that. But number one, what I found was I fell in love with this community. I love being here. Just as important, the amount of love that I've been shown in this community has been inspiring and very moving. And you know, I get recognized out here a lot. You know, I met Bob. We had lunch today around the corner, and I don't know if you saw this, Bob, but when we hit the corner, a dude in a big SUV was screaming my name in the car as he drove by. I get that a lot. I get that from the group of gentlemen that hang out across the street, whether it's 8 degrees or 80 degrees, and they range in age from 35 to 70. And the first day I was here, they called my name and I went across the street and I've been talking to them every day since then. I've had 3 block parties this summer. The last one became a fundraiser and speaking opportunity for Chiose, who's Reggie Osei, Combat Jack's son, who's running for city council in the 36th. It was such it was an honor to be able to provide a platform for him in that way, and to really carry on the name of Reggie Osei and honor him. And I'm trying to do more of this. I also know that you know, my role as a white person that has occupied a lot of space in Black communities, it's incumbent upon me to speak to other white people, and I've been having those conversations, even in my own family. They're not always fun conversations. They're not always productive conversations, but they're necessary conversations, and you know, trying to find that right tone where I'm not coming across as like preachy or like better than somebody because you know, I've had the privilege of having a prominent role in hip hop culture and in an aspect of Black culture, and that's part of the conversation. I always say, like, look, like the last 2 years, particularly this year, has been incredibly illuminating. There's a whole new lexicon around racial justice that requires work. It requires taking in knowledge and processing and thinking about it and relating it to your own experiences and really checking yourself. And I try to do as much of that work as possible, because I don't really feel like you can have other important conversations until this conversation is really addressed. Right? You can't.
What is mine?
It's just fundamental to addressing everything moving forward. And I'm just trying to do my part. And I wouldn't even call myself an activist by any means, but I think I'm trying to use my voice in a way that makes sense, that pushes things forward, and that acknowledges the thanks I feel for what I've been given by so many people.
Right on.
Yeah. Bobito, I love saying your name.
Yeah, I gotta give y'all praise, because me and Stretch have never done an interview for 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Never. This is the longest fucking interview we have. This is the longest interview I've ever done, and I'm completely engaged.
I love it.
So thank you, because y'all are asking us a lot of questions that most people don't ask us, or haven't thought to ask us, or were too scared to ask us. So
No
good
doubt.
stuff, Jasmin and Talib.
What we try to do with people's part, I want to accept the compliment that you gave us graciously, because as Stretch just mentioned, Combat Jack, Reggie Osei. You know, I grew up in New York City watching Gil Noble. You know, I grew up, I'm born in the 70s. I remember This Is Your Life, you know, and so I try to do deep dives, and I'm trying to do like which I'm trying to present in a way where the show could be looked at as what Gil Noble did with Like It Is on ABC for so many years, or what Combat Jack did, rest in peace, with Reggie Osei did with the Combat Jack show. So, you know, for you to say that, and we only have a couple more questions. I think we might have 2 more left. So you got right through. I appreciate the love, brother. And it's like, I'm glad I sat down. It was a challenge for us to figure out how to frame, because really, with all due respect, we could have did this with each one of y'all. We could have did a whole Stretch show, a whole Bob show, and God willing, maybe we'll do that in the future. But it's my honor, my pleasure to sit down with y'all. You know, and I'm gonna let Jasmine ask her question.
Yeah, but Talib, it speaking for me, it means a lot to be here. And when I bumped into you at that Dave Chappelle jump off at Vans, you showed me so much love outside. And we hadn't seen each other in a long time. And that meant a lot to me. Because particularly how you have grown and evolved as a thinker, as an activist, like particularly because of that, the love that you showed me was just, it was really appreciated. You know, I love the acknowledgement for what I did musically, but I want to be respected and appreciated for what I'm doing as a human being outside of music.
Word.
Bobito, so you founded the Bounce magazine, and your documentary Rock Rubber 45s placed you right at the intersection of basketball and music. I want to talk a little bit about Ice Cube's Big Three partner being associated with Steve Bannon and Ice Cube's recent statements about Trump. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Wasn't aware of that, and I wasn't aware of his Trump comments. You know, I think doing business in this day and age and trying to avoid somewhere along the line people who do not align with your political and social justice perspectives is difficult. I think there are times when we draw the line. Stretch and I actually just went through this recently, where we had a potential project, and you know, we pulled out because of some things that were said that were flammable, I guess, you know, or not completely accept. You know, it's like we all kind of like draw the line, but you know, it's tough because I mean, I'll give you an example with ESPN. You know, I was hired to be a director of a series called Sneaker Center for their Plus platform. That's like their new streaming. They want to be the Netflix of sports and entertainment. I thought it was a great opportunity to further my career as a filmmaker. You know, and so I was pumping a bunch of features, one of which was the African American Sneaker Festival in Portland. I mean, it was like a phenomenal segment. You know, I hired like predominantly people of color on the editing staff, hired people of color, you know, to be behind the camera, cinematographers. You know, it was like really controlling everything I could control. And then, you know, ESPN saw the segment. They were like, nah, we're not going to run this. And it was like 2 episodes in, and I was like, what? You know, like this, you know, this is not just like about sneakers. This is about like empowerment, and, you know, and this is, you know, 2019. And I was still sensitive, you know, if it was 2020 with all the, you know, things that are going on, you know, I would have been like on hyper mode. But I was like, yo, I really told the executive producers, like, yo, like, I'm going to draw the line on this. If they don't run that segment, I'm out, because that's, you know, we come from the era of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, which was like, you know, no sellout, and basketball or hip hop was like a big thing. Like, you know, you would, you know, in basketball, like that was like a dude on the mic, but like, oh, he sold out on, you know, on that layup. Like it was like big deal. Like, you know, it was like, oh my God, I'm a sellout in hip hop. Like, So I was like, nah, B, I can't do this shit. And so I really had a long conversation with myself. And I was like, if I pull out, they're going to hire one of their corporate white males to direct this, because all ESPN was sending me was white male correspondents. And I was like, nah, I want to get Maria Clifton in here, a black Puerto Rican, to be one of my correspondents. They were like, we don't know who she is. Eventually she wound up being like the majority of the biggest features in the show, because they fell in love with her, because I knew what the fuck I was talking about.
That's right.
Basically, like, I was able to slide in so many people of color into this 8-episode series that I don't think another director would have done, because they would have been focused on like, oh, sneakers. Yeah.
Right.
Like I was like more like, nah, like, I mean, same thing. If you read my book, Where'd You Get Those? New York City Sneaker Culture, 1960, 1987, or if you watch my film, Rock Rubber 45s, or you watch my first film, Doing It in the Park, Pick Up Basketball, NYC, or if you realize what me and Stretch did for the 90s, giving voice to the voices, like, that's always been me. Like, I'm going to slide in as many unknown, up and coming people as I possibly can when I get these, big ass platforms to give me an opportunity to shine. And so
Yes.
I was like, damn, this sucks, but I'm not a sellout. I'm not compromising my creativity. I'm going to still use this opportunity to the best as I possibly can. So as far as Ice Cube goes, I don't know. I don't know him personally. I never met him. I don't know what struggles he's going through, discerning how he creatively compromises himself, or if he's thinking like, hey, I could partner with this dude, but I'm giving opportunity to these retired players, predominantly black, who are going to like, give, inspiration to a number of 40 plus year olds to stay in shape or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what he's thinking. I can't speak for him, and I can't speak for any person of color who, wants to vote or support Trump either. That's not where my head is at.
Yeah.
But I want to respect people's decision to choose in 2020, even though I might completely be opposed to that choice. So I'm not going to speak on Ice Cube at all, although I guess I kind of have.
I mean, yeah, I think representation matters, and I think you used the opportunity to tell us a story of something that happened to you. And you started out, when you answered the question, you said, listen, I didn't hear what he said. I didn't know the information about the Steve Bannon thing, but I think because this is a show that is born out of hip hop, it's important for me to say that even in the way that we asked that question, we're asking it because people are talking about it. But here at the show, Ice Cube has been a guest on the show, and Ice Cube is my OG. When I trace my style of rap, Ice Cube is a direct influence. And so Ice Cube, T.I. said people are critical of Ice Cube's choices right now, but T.I. said something that's very important. He said we should give Ice Cube the benefit of his rep. And I will say that even though me personally, on a personal level, I disagree with some of the ways in which he's moved, I completely respect his intention. I think Ice Cube is doing it from a pro-black space. And I think that Ice Cube definitely loves the culture, loves the people. And Ice Cube is definitely not a Trump supporter. He's not someone who's out here, he was weaponized by the Trump campaign. And he even recently spoke out about it. When Eric Trump retweeted a fake picture of Ice Cube and 50 Cent with Trump hats on, Ice Cube wrote, well, nigga, please, in response to Eric Trump. So Ice Cube is definitely making sure that we know he's not going to allow himself to be weaponized. But I'm glad you brought up what you said about the big three, because that's why I wanted to ask you specifically. That's why we want to know here at the show specifically how you felt about Ice Cube and the big three thing. So thank you for answering that. And I just got to ask, just lastly, back to DJing. Stretch, you run around with the originals. You talked about Clark Kent being your mentor. We've talked a lot about Rich Medina. D Nice obviously has shown the world in quarantine and lockdown how important DJing is to the world. So I want to get you guys' take on what DJing means to the world now when people do not have the opportunity to go out and gather in the way that we did. All of us have made names on the fact that we get people to gather. Me as an artist, I get paid because people show up where I'm at. You spoke about streaming. We're not getting paid from streaming like that. We're getting paid for showing up in the flesh. Yeah. So I just wanted to get y'all take on this current environment for creators and DJs.
Yeah, I mean, it's I It's a mixed bag. I mean, the live experience can never be replaced. I think it's not even close. I think online DJing it's just it's the best we can make of the situation.
Right. We're settling.
But it's whack to me. It's still whack. But it's great. I mean, it's great that you can go online and catch Jazzy Jeff, catch G-Nice, catch Clark Kent. Right. I mean, that's amazing.
It's like when I see people wearing masks, because someone sends me a mask, I'm like, damn, that's a nice mask, but it's whack that I'm complimenting your fucking mask.
I know, new normal.
I mean, the coolest thing about DJing online though is that you're not playing for a dance floor, so you can really do whatever you want. You don't have to worry about people not dancing. You don't have to worry about the bar not ringing it up. You know, you can really kind of create. You can do things thematically that you would never be able to do in a live setting. So it's a different thing. It affords some opportunities that you can't do in a live setting. But goddamn, I can't wait for clubs to reopen again. You know, this ain't it.
Who are you telling?
I love the conversational aspect of the chat where you really can be. You can create a community around what you do. I mean, Bob and I have been doing Stretch and Bob Thursdays for many months now, and similar to our radio show in the 90s, we have a crew of regulars. We've got a whole kind of, you know, inside joke lexicon that has emerged out of that, and it's been really uplifting for not just for the listeners but for me and Bob as well. Mm-hmm. And it's nice to be able to do that at a sensible hour without leaving your house.
Yeah, indeed. Well, this has been an honor and a pleasure for me. This is a full circle moment for me. I'm one of the rappers that came up in the era where all we want to do is be interviewed on Stretch and Bob, have an opportunity to spit rhymes to Stretch and Bob, and for me to be interviewing y'all, and for y'all to say what you said to me about this interview. It means the world to me. So thank you so much for your time. It's very valuable. What you added to the culture is very valuable. I love and respect both of y'all. And this has been the People's Party. Stretch and Bobito.